Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the UC Health Training Center for today's edition of Broncos Now. Team reporter and host Sydney Jones here. And coming up on today's episode, we'll hear from head coach Nathaniel Hackett and several players as they look ahead to Week 6. Plus, Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla joins the show to discuss injuries surrounding the team, who needs to step up, and more. All that coming up. The team was back at practice today here at the UC Health Training Center as they look ahead to their Monday night matchup versus the Los Angeles Chargers. The Broncos had a mini bye week this weekend following that Thursday night game and gave them extra time to let their bodies heal. Coach Hackett said it came at a perfect time this season with the number of injuries this team has suffered.
It's huge for the entire team. I mean, to have this much time, we've been banged up a little bit, and the guys need this time to be able to re-energize themselves and get all their bodies back. So I think this mini bye kind of comes at the perfect time for us.
With the extra couple days this weekend, Coach Hackett and company evaluated the first 5 weeks of the season, and today gave his thoughts on the offense's efficiency.
Negative plays. I think that's been kind of one of our nemesises. We've been really good in some explosive passes down the field. I think we're pretty high up there in the league, and we have some really good explosive. We're really feast or famine, and it's in the red zone, and it's in the middle of the field. The amount of get back on tracks we have is just too difficult. We need to be way more efficient on first down, getting positive yards, and even just incompletions instead of sacks or penalties. So I think those are the things that we're focusing on, trying to narrow down the things that we want to be great at and then continually develop in those.
Quarterback Russell Wilson has been dealing with a shoulder injury this past week, but Coach Hackett said he should be ready to play on Monday night against the Chargers. Both Coach Hackett and guard Dalton Risner discussed Russell's resilience today.
I've learned in this game, everybody has something that's going on. It's a very, very physical game, as we see week in and week out with everybody. And Russell is a very tough human being. He's not going to miss anything. He wants to be out there competing for this team. And so we'll just make sure that we take care of him, do the right things to get him to as close to 100% as we can.
Russell's a warrior. For me as an offensive lineman, I love blocking for that guy. I love going to war for him. I'll continue to go to war for him each and every day, each and every game. And it's no question. Now that you guys know that he's been battling injury, and the cool thing about Russell is that wasn't something that he let everyone know. That wasn't something he was complaining about throughout the week. He wanted to go to war and help us get a win. And, it's not my job to figure out what's affecting my quarterback or anything like that. It's my job to protect him. It's my job to keep him clean. So we all go through injuries, but we all got to be warriors, and that's exactly what he's done. It's not my job to think about my teammates' play. I think the most important thing for us as a Denver Broncos offense is to understand that we all got to do our job. When all 11 of us on that field do our job, that's when we're going to get it clicking. I'm not going to worry about what my quarterback's doing because I'm not a quarterback. You guys would not like for me to be your guys' quarterback. I'm not a running back. I'm not a tight end. I'm going to do my job the best that I can because that's what I'm paid to do. That's what I'm here to do, is to buy into my job and do it the best I can. And if everyone can buy into that philosophy, we're going to get this thing rolling. And it's more than just buying in and giving effort. It's focusing. It's having intentionality. It's buying into what the coaches are telling us. And we got all the guys, the right pieces to do that. So in my opinion, that's what we need to do.
And as the Broncos gear up for their Monday night matchup, cornerback Pat Surtain spoke on the AFC West and the challenge that comes with playing a division opponent.
The competitiveness of the whole division is rising. You can see from last night that it was a high competitive game. It was going both ways, a high-scoring game. It just going to come down to the wire in some games like this because, division is highly talented, highly stoked. So, you're going to expect those kind of tough games throughout the week in the division games. So,
now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio is Broncos lead writer Aric DiLalla. Aric, let's get to it. First things first, Justin Simmons, Greg Dulcich, and Michael Ojemudia, they were all back at practice today, and they've been designated to return from injured reserve. What do you think this means for Monday night's game versus the Chargers, having those guys back?
Yeah, first of all, the Broncos do have 3 roster spots available, so that's important. They waived Jonathan Kongbo on Tuesday afternoon, which gives them 50 players on their active roster. So a little bit of clarification. They've been designated for return, which opens their 21-day practice window, but they still have to be activated to the 53-man roster in order to officially play. Gotcha. It's possible, Sydney, that they practice all week and that roster move doesn't get made until Sunday. That's just kind of a technicality, I would assume, at this point. You generally don't open these guys' practice window unless they're ready to play. And so you're right, I would expect the three of these guys to play this weekend. Let's start with Justin Simmons, a really good player. Maybe the Broncos' best defensive player, though Pat Surtain, while Justin's been gone, he's stated his own case for that. But regardless, is a better secondary, a better defense with Justin Simmons. For sure. I think it helps them from a communication standpoint, especially since Ronald Darby, of course, won't be out there. And Justin just has the ability to make plays. If there's one area this Broncos defense has lacked just a little bit, it's getting interceptions. Obviously, had a couple against Matt Ryan, but I believe those were the first of the season. So they need to find a way to get more of those. Justin Simmons helps you there. And then at cornerback, we mentioned Ronald Darby not being there. Damari Mathis, he practiced on a side field on Tuesday, so maybe we'll have to see on Thursday what his status is. We'll get an official practice report. But Michael Ojemudia, of course, is an option there if Damari Mathis can't go either, so he'll be important. I'd imagine he'll play a role right away on this defense. And then you go over to the offensive side of the ball with Greg Dulcich. He's a guy that brings that vertical threat. He has speed in the middle of the field. He's got the physicality to break away from defenders once he catches the ball. My biggest question with him, Sydney, is just how quickly is he able to make a big contribution? Because as we heard Nathaniel Hackett say on Tuesday, listen, he hasn't played football in a long time, and so they're going to work him in slowly. They want to be smart with him. One, I would assume from an injury standpoint, you don't want to rush him back as he comes back from that hamstring injury. But then also, it's not fair, I don't think, to Greg to assume he can just play 60 plays in all sorts of different formations. And so I would think this week they'll try to get him up to speed as much as possible. They'll see what works for him, what packages can he survive and thrive in. Right. And then after that, you kind of develop a game plan off of that. And so with Greg, he's a guy maybe he can give you a couple of big catches in the game, but I don't know that it's fair to expect him to go out there and have 100 yards in his first game. So I know people are excited about Greg, but got to temper expectations just a little bit.
Slowly but surely.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, Aric, we heard Coach Hackett give an update on Tuesday regarding Russell Wilson and his shoulder injury. You know, they said they're doing everything that they can to make sure he's as close to 100% as possible, but are sure that he should be ready for Monday night. I mean, Aric, it seems like with all these injuries, this mini bye couldn't have come at a more perfect time. Yeah,
no doubt about it. I mean, when you looked at the Broncos practice on Tuesday, there were a lot of guys that were out there that had not practiced recently, whether it's P.J. Locke coming back from a concussion, Aaron Patrick, same deal. Jonathan Cooper, who's been dealing with a hamstring injury. I mean, a lot of guys kind of getting back in the fold here. Maybe Billy Turner, too, could be a guy who could return. So, yes, the Broncos got 10, 11 days of rest between games as they head into this week of practice. I think they're at a good point there. And with Russ, it's helpful for him, obviously, to have those extra days before he has to play again. And I know there's been some chatter on social media. Do you shut Russ down? Do you give him this week off to rest? I think you've got to trust Russell. He's played in this league for more than a decade. He knows his body. Yeah. If he feels like he can play, I think you've got to trust him on that. And look, it's hard to tell just from the side, but he didn't look limited in any way on Tuesday. Yeah. Kind of as during the media viewing period of practice. And he's a guy that's tough. He's missed very few games in his NFL career. He's always out there. He's always available. So it doesn't surprise me that he's battling to be out there. But yeah, the more time to heal, the better. And so this does come at a good time for Denver. Looking at these injuries, let's talk about the offensive line real quick. Garrett Bowles, he was officially placed on IR earlier this week. Coach Hackett said they're still working through, what the line might look like, but they're looking to get, the best five out there, obviously. Who do you think maybe some of those guys might be who might have to step up in Garrett's place? I mean, you basically have three guys who are going to fill two spots, and Calvin Anderson, Cameron Fleming, and Billy Turner. And what we've seen so far is Calvin Anderson filled in at left tackle kind of briefly there at the end of the game. Yeah. And Cam Fleming has exclusively played right tackle. And so, that's a possible combination. You could put Billy Turner back at right tackle and keep Calvin Anderson at left tackle. You could put Cam Fleming over at left tackle and put Billy Turner at right tackle. I mean, there's a lot of options here. And so I understand why Nathaniel Hackett doesn't want to give anything away quite yet from a competitive standpoint. But the Broncos do have guys that can play on different sides of the line. They can give the Broncos what they need there in place of Garrett Bowles. And, maybe we'll get a chance to see Billy Turner for the first time as he works his way back from injury. Was obviously active last week but did not play.
Right.
And maybe they even throw a wild card in there. I mean, Billy Turner's played a lot of guard before, so maybe they put him in there at right guard potentially if a Quinn Miners can't go. We'll have to see. I mean, that's just purely speculation at this point, but I think nothing's off the table here. As Nathaniel Hackett said, they're looking at what they're doing. They're self-scouting. They're evaluating this whole offense. I think you have to be open to the fact that maybe there's a different combination that works.
Aric, we heard earlier in the show, Coach Hackett say that they took this mini bye week and really evaluated this offense throughout the first 5 weeks. What do you hope to see kind of over this next week and heading into Monday night that maybe this offense really focuses on?
I mean, Nathaniel Hackett, as we heard, said more negative plays. You've got to avoid, 2nd and 15, 3rd and 12. Dalton Risner talked about the same thing, that the Broncos have shown they can get out of those situations, but it's just not sustainable. And so I hope the Broncos are able to come up with, I think one thing Nathaniel Hackett said was really interesting, figure out what we do best and really hone in on that. And so who knows what that is? We're not going to get a chance to see that because the Broncos practices in the regular season are closed to the media. But I think you'll be able to tell on Monday night what they've kind of settled in on in terms of what their identity is going to be, what they want to focus on. Do they simplify things a little bit? There's a lot of different directions the Broncos could go, but it just all starts with, from a coaching standpoint, from a playing standpoint, you've got to focus in on your role, making sure you're doing your job and not having those one-man breakdowns, because Nathaniel Hackett's talked about it. They've had a lot of big plays. They've had sustained drives. Yeah. Some of these advanced metrics, they're high up there in terms of offensive football. The points just haven't followed, and a lot of the times that is a one-man breakdown somewhere. And so guys have to make sure that they're all working in unison, 11 guys at a time, and the Broncos will find some success. And maybe we see that Monday, maybe it clicks a little bit. And I know we've talked about that again and again.
I know.
When is it going to click? Well, at this point, it's time. You got to just see it.
Right. Well, Aric, the Broncos, they sit at 2-3. Chargers sit at 3-2. It's going to be a tough one on Monday night. What's the mindset you think in the locker room this week as they're heading into another division matchup?
Yeah, I mean, you've got to win some games now that you weren't necessarily supposed to win, quote unquote. And the Broncos had the Seahawks game, they had the Colts game, that you would argue, hey, the Broncos should have won those games. And so you've got to find games to steal now. And this is a game that I think you can steal, just in terms of this team is dealing with injuries of their own. Rashawn Slater out for the year. Right. Joey Bosa not playing right now. Justin Herbert's still a little bit banged up. They've played some tight football games here over recent weeks. And while they are 3-2, it's a chance for you to knock them back to 3-3, even your record. And as you look at the AFC playoff picture, Sydney, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later in the week, but there's a bunch of teams that are jumbled up. And you go through it and you kind of say, okay, well, a team here might get a spot and a team here might not. I think what it's going to come down to at the end of the year is just the Broncos and Chargers, which of those teams is ahead in the standings. Yeah. And so if you can get a head-to-head win over the Chargers, I think it's going to go a long way at the end of the season. It gets you back on track. It's important to remember here, the Broncos are not 0-5. They're not 1-4. I mean, they're still a game within 500. Now, you do need to win this one, but if you can do that, a couple of more winnable games before the bye week, things are not over here. The sky is not falling for the Broncos.
Repeat that.
The sky is not falling. And so the Broncos have a chance here to get a big win against the Chargers.
Yep. Well, Aric, looking forward to it. Going to be another fun matchup. Appreciate you joining me on the show today.
You got it, Sid.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's episode. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in today and every day. I'll hope you meet me right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube tomorrow evening for another episode of Broncos Now. I'll see you all then.